Good morning. Today and tomorrow, NATO foreign ministers will address different pressing security issues, including the situation in the Middle East. I welcome the extension of the pause in the hostilities in Gaza. This has allowed for much needed relief for the people in Gaza, and also the release of more hostages and also the provision or delivery of more humanitarian aid. We will of course address the situation in Ukraine. We see intense fighting along the front line, and we have seen waves of drone attacks against Ukrainian cities, and we need to be prepared for more fighting and also more air and missile attacks against Ukrainian cities. This just makes it even more important that NATO allies continue to support Ukraine, and I welcome the recent announcement by allies of additional support. Germany announced 8 billion extra euros. The Netherlands, 2 billion extra euros. Just a couple of weeks ago, we established the training center in Romania to train F-16 pilots, and there is also now the 20 countries which have established the coalition to provide more air defense and coordinate efforts to provide air defense to Ukraine. So allies are doing a lot, and I expect also at the meeting today and tomorrow that allies will reiterate their strong support to Ukraine. We'll also meet with Foreign Minister Kuleba in the NATO-Ukraine Council tomorrow. Then other issues will be addressed, like China, the Western Balkans, and also the threats and the opportunities in our southern neighborhood. And I will come back to them as we then address them throughout today and tomorrow. With that, I'm ready to take some questions.
How frustrated are you that there will be no flag-raising ceremony for Sweden today? And is there any leverage that could be used to speed up the process?
So I had hoped for a full accession of Sweden in NATO by this meeting. That has not happened. The good news is that President Erdogan has submitted the papers for ratification to the Turkish Parliament, and I expect the Parliament to finalize their discussions and conclude as soon as possible, because it will be good for all of us, for Sweden, for NATO, for Turkey, to have Sweden as a full-fledged member. We need to also remember that Turkey has legitimate security concerns about terrorism, about working more closely together with NATO allies on fighting a real terror threat. No other ally has suffered more terrorist attacks than Turkey. And therefore I welcome that as part of this process. We have agreed to step up what we do in the fight against terrorism. Sweden has delivered. They are working more closely with Turkey in the fight against PKK and terrorist groups. NATO has stepped up its efforts, and therefore now I expect that also Turkey deliver on what we all agreed in Vilnius to finalize the ratification and to work more closely together in the fight against terrorism.
Secretary General, do you expect a major breakthrough on the front lines in Ukraine in some foreseeable future, and what does Ukraine need to do so?
I'm very careful predicting about the developments along the front line, because wars are by nature unpredictable. What we have seen is that the courage, the determination, the skill of the Ukrainian armed forces have impressed the whole world, because we need to remember where we started when this war, when the full-fledged invasion happened last year. We feared, and many experts believed, that Ukraine would collapse within weeks, and that Kyiv would be under Russian control within days. That did not happen. The Ukrainians have been able to push back Russian forces in the north, in the east and in the south, and they have liberated around half of the territory that Russia occupied at the beginning of the war. So this demonstrates the skills and the capabilities of the Ukrainian armed forces. NATO allies have delivered unprecedented military support. I urge allies, and allies have also committed to continue to deliver support. And we also know that the front line has not moved over the last year, but the intense fighting continues. And we have also to take into account that even though the front line has not moved so much, the Ukrainians have been able to inflict heavy losses on the Russian forces with deep strike capabilities, with cruise missiles delivered by NATO allies. So we need to continue to support them, also knowing that the stronger Ukraine is on the battlefield, the stronger the hand will be on the negotiating table. So if you want a negotiated peaceful solution, which ensures that Ukraine prevails as a sovereign, independent nation, then the best way to get there is to continue to provide military support to Ukraine, and that's what the allies are going to do.
Maybe ask Stockholm to chair.
Mr. Stoltenberg, does your visit to the countries of the Western Balkans have anything to do with Zelensky's statement that the Balkans is Russia's next target? And does NATO have any operational knowledge, intelligence data about possible conflicts in Balkans, especially in Bosnia?
As I just returned from a visit to the region, to Bosnia-Herzegovina, to Serbia, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and I met also leaders from the whole region. And of course what we see there is that tensions are increasing. We have seen increased tensions and inflammatory rhetoric in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We have seen actually some serious incidents of violence in Kosovo, including attack on NATO peacekeepers. 93 NATO soldiers were wounded, some of them were very seriously wounded. And we also saw the Banska incidents where actually 3 people were killed in September in Kosovo. So these are serious incidents, and we need to stay focused on the Western Balkans at the same time as we, of course, address the war in Gaza and also continue to provide support to Ukraine. Rest assured, NATO will do what is necessary to sustain or to ensure stability in the region, because this is important for not only the Western Balkans but also for the whole of Europe and NATO. We have a presence there. We work together with the European Union, the EU4 force in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We have a presence in Kosovo, and in light of what the increased tensions, we have over the last few weeks added 1,000 more troops to our military presence in Kosovo, and we will work closely with partners, with allies in the region to ensure that we do what is possible to reduce tensions and to prevent any escalation of the conflict.
Have you asked Stockholm to speed up its ratification process to share its roadmap to combat terrorism, as insisted by the Turkish Parliament?
But Sweden has delivered, and that is important because Turkey has real concerns, and they have legitimate concerns when it comes to fighting terrorism. PKK is not only regarded as a terrorist organization in Turkey, also Sweden, NATO allies regard PKK as a terrorist organization. So therefore welcome the fact that the Swedish intelligence services and the Turkish intelligence services are now working more closely together, sharing more information, and have also established a permanent mechanism to work more closely together to address legitimate concerns of Turkey. I also welcome the fact that Sweden has removed restrictions on arms exports to Turkey, because I strongly believe that allies should be able to buy and acquire military equipment from each other. So therefore, I have stated that the time has come also then for Turkey to finalize its part of this agreement, to finalize the ratification. And I welcome therefore that the President has submitted the the papers for ratification to the parliament. He did that a few weeks ago. The parliament in Turkey, the Grand National Assembly, has started the processing, the discussions, and I hope they can finalize that as soon as possible.
Very general on Ukraine. The EU has difficulties to keep their promise on the ammunition. The US, the aid is blocked in Congress, and also the latest drawdown package was one of the smallest ever. Aren't you, at the same time, Putin has shifted to war economy and they get weapons from North Korea and Iran. Do you think Ukraine has to think about a new strategy in order to prevail?
It's our obligation to ensure that we provide Ukraine with the weapons they need, because it will be a tragedy for Ukrainians if President Putin wins, but it will also be dangerous for us, because then the message to all authoritarian leaders, not only in Moscow but also in Beijing, is that when they violate international law, when they invade another country, when they use force, they get what they want. So this is about the whole idea of a rules-based international order where territorial borders are respected. And therefore, NATO allies have provided unprecedented level of military support. This has really had an impact, made a difference on the battlefield, because the Ukrainians have been able to liberate around 50% of the territory that was occupied after the full-scale invasion. The challenge now is that we need to sustain this support. And therefore I welcome the very concrete announcement that have been made of billions of extras of euros extra from Germany, from the Netherlands, the establishment of this coalition to provide air defense, and also many other allies announcing more ammunition, more weapon systems, and so on. I'm confident that the United States will continue to provide support because it is in the security interest of the United States to do so. And it's also in line with what we have agreed. So this is all allies have stated again and again, the last time at our NATO summit with all the leaders present in Vilnius, that we will provide support to Ukraine, we will step up our support, and also NATO has agreed to help them also to modernize their armed forces to ensure full interoperability between the Ukrainian forces and the NATO forces. And on top of that, what NATO does, of course we have the US-led the contact group for Ukraine, Ramstein format, with 50 nations, and they are of course also providing support, which makes a huge difference. So again, we just have to stay the course. This is about also our security interests. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Självfallet har jag också gärna sett att Sverige hade kunnat delta i det här mötet som fullvärdig medlem, men nu har vi fokus framåt. Och vi vet ju att Turkiet har sagt att man kommer fortsätta behandlingen av den svenska ansökan i det turkiska parlamentet. Och det är viktigt att så sker, precis som generalsekreterare Stoltenberg har sagt, så är det viktigt att Sverige blir fullvärdig medlem utav NATO. Vi har det allvarligaste säkerhetsläget sedan andra världskriget och också naturligtvis ett krig i vårt närområde i form av Ukraina. Så det är viktigt och angeläget att det här sker och att Sverige kan delta i de här mötena som medlem fullt ut. Och därför är det viktigt att Turkiet och Ungern slutför sina ratificeringsprocesser.
Vad kommer du att säga till din turkiska kollega?
Ja, jag kommer naturligtvis att säga det som vi alltid säger. Vi har fullföljt våra åtaganden och vi räknar med att det turkiska parlamentet kommer att slutföra ratificeringsprocessen precis på det viset som vi kom överens om i samband med NATO-toppmötet i Vilnius i somras.
Tror du det handlar om Sverige egentligen, eller handlar det om att Turkiet vill köpa flygplan?
Vi vet ju redan att de här frågorna hänger ihop, för då har ju president Erdogan själv sagt i samband med att han gjorde sina statements i september. Så det är ju ytterst dåligt bevarad hemlighet att det förhåller sig på det viset, utan de här sakerna hänger ihop. Men det betyder ju inte att Sverige inte genom att uppfylla våra åtaganden, vi har ju gjort det som vi sa att vi skulle göra.
När det gäller ditt möte då med Turkiets utrikesminister, hur långt kommer det att vara och vilka frågor är föranmälda?
Så här, antalet minuter, det spelar liksom ingen roll i det här sammanhanget, utan det viktiga att fokusera på det att vi får möjligheten att sitta ner och prata om. Vi kommer naturligtvis att ta upp det som vi alltid tar upp i det här sammanhanget, nämligen en förfrågan om fortsättningen på processen i det turkiska parlamentet och när man räknar med att vi har slutfört den här processen och man kan gå till omröstning. Det är ju det viktiga. Och det kan ju bara den turkiska ministern och det turkiska parlamentet svara på, för det här är ju ett parlament som är suveränt, precis som den svenska riksdagen är suverän.
Men det har ju mer eller mindre utlovats att det här skulle behandlas under session i oktober. Det har Erdogans själv sagt. Han har också svarat på fråga jakande från generalsekreteraren. Ställer du frågor om vad det är som försenar processen? Ställer du sådana aktiva frågor gentemot Turkiet?
Ja, vi har ju naturligtvis en löpande dialog kring detta. Jag vill dock säga att det turkiska parlamentet gjorde det som vi kom överens om i Vilnius. Det vill säga att presidenten skickade över ratificeringsprotokollet till parlamentet och parlamentet tog upp det för behandling. Och vi räknar med att det här kommer att kunna slutföras också. Det finns ju ingenting kvar ifrån svensk vidkommande av de åtaganden som vi redan har fullföljt.
Hur ser du på uttalandet i
Jag har inte så mycket att säga om detta faktiskt. Jag kan bara konstatera att det där är en inrikespolitisk debatt och den är väldigt inrikespolitisk till sin karaktär. Jag bedömer inte att den i det här fallet påverkar processen.
Varför gör den inte det?
Switch to English. Would you be able to tell us where you're feeling frustrated or really angry that Sweden is not yet a member of NATO?
Well, I think it goes without saying that I would have welcomed the participation of Sweden during this foreign ministers meeting in NATO as a full member of NATO. However, we see before us how the Turkish parliament will soon continue and also close the business of ratifying Sweden's membership to NATO. And of course, during the meeting, I'm going to have several discussions with my colleagues. We feel a great support, not at least from the United States, but also from other NATO allies towards Swedish membership. I'm also going to have a bilateral with my Turkish counterpart, Minister Hakan Fidan, and of course we will discuss this topic as well.
How soon do you think you'll actually get this membership?
I'm not going to speculate in any dates right now, and also...
It's almost 2 years since you applied to join NATO.
Well, however, there has been processes that have taken longer time. We can say so far that having been received status as invitee during the summit in Madrid, this was a historically short process, if you look at it from a NATO perspective. So, of course, we are always looking towards closing the business and arrive at this meeting as full members. But so far we see progress within the process, and that's good for us. Ja, vi kommer att träffa honom en bit in på eftermiddagen, exakt. Jag tror det är runt 16-tiden.
Kommer vi få någon slags rapportering hur mötet har gått?
Allt sånt kan vi ta med annat.
Vad kan Sverige göra för att snabba på processen med Ungern och Turkiet?
Det är inte en fråga om att snabba på, utan i det här fallet har vi fullföljt våra åtaganden som vi gjorde i Madrid och det som bekräftades i Vilnius. För svensk vidkommande finns det ingenting kvar, utan vi noterar ju, precis som jag svarade tidigare i en fråga, att det naturligtvis finns andra processer som också äger rum. Vi vet ju till exempel att president Biden i samband med Vilnius-toppmötet talade om att han höll på att sätta samman ett, som han kallade för, konsortium mellan Turkiet och Grekland kring försäljningen av F-16-plan till Turkiet och F-35 till Grekland. De här sakerna spelar säkert roll för den tidsutdräkt som vi har bakom oss. Men nu räknar vi också med att man kommer att gå i mål och att vi kommer att få se ett slut på den här processen så att vi kan bli fullvärdiga medlemmar.
Har Sverige några indikationer på när det kommer att behandlas i Ungern respektive Turkiet?
Det turkiska parlamentet har ju redan processen igång. Vad gäller Ungern så vet vi att de har slutfört sin parlamentariska process och har egentligen bara slutomröstningen kvar. Och den kan de genomföra med ganska kort varsel.
Men har du Sverige några indikationer på när det här kan ske?
Jag har inga datum här och nu naturligtvis. Det här är ju suveräna parlament som vi pratar om.
Är du orolig över
att när det gäller Ungern, att saker som har med EU att göra, vad gäller pengar till Ukraina och sånt, så att säga, att det spelar in i NATO ratificeringen?
Jag har väldigt svårt att se de kopplingarna av den enkla anledningen att NATO-frågorna står ju på sina egna ben i det här sammanhanget. Och det här är ju en försvarsallians där det också finns andra länder som deltar som inte är EU-medlemmar, till exempel Turkiet. Så jag tycker det är viktigt att hålla de här sakerna isär och vi ser inga sådana indikationer.
Ungerns president när hon var här för några veckor sedan sa att det kanske är bra med lite fler kontakter mellan svenska och ungerska politiker i det här för att få en lossning. Är det någonting som har skett?
Vi har kontakter på flera olika nivåer hela tiden och man får inte glömma att Sverige och Ungern har väldigt välutvecklat samarbete på många områden. Vi har till exempel många svenska företag som är aktiva i Ungern och vi har dessutom Gripen-projektet som är ju ett militärtekniskt projekt gemensamt mellan våra stater. I det här fallet när det gäller NATO-ratificeringen så vet vi att den ungerska regeringen har tydligt uttalat sig positivt till förmån för att Sverige ska bli NATO-medlem. Vi räknar därför att man kommer kunna slutföra den här processen med väldigt kort varsel den dagen då Ankara också säger att man kommer att göra det. För vi håller oss till det som premiärminister Viktor Orbán har sagt. Vi kommer inte vara sist i den här processen med att ratificera Sverige.
Perfekt, då är vi klara.
Det var tack.
Då får vi tag i dig, Anna.
Morning. We meet today and tomorrow for consistent discussions on the implementation of the decision adopted by our leaders in Vilnius and to prepare the benchmarks for the anniversary summit in Washington next year. Romania stresses the importance of consolidating the eastern flank by the implementation of the operational regional plans. In this respect, all the battle groups along the eastern flank must be raised at the level of brigade. What is very important for us is to underline the fact that Russian attacks on the ports in the Black Sea and on the Danube produce incidents on the Romanian territory on an allied country. This is why it's very important to continue the measures in this respect. We are very grateful to our partners for the measures taken by NATO and individually by the allies. It is also very important for Romania in this context to enhance air police, air patrolling, deploying radars, which demonstrates the solidarity and send a strong signal to Russian Federation that the Black Sea is of strategic importance for NATO. 2 weeks ago, the F-16 training hub has been inaugurated in Romania, This solid partnership, transatlantic partnership, built with valuable contribution of Denmark, the Netherlands, and the US, brings further our commitment in supporting the Ukraine. Let us keep in mind that Russia will soon resume its winter campaign against Ukraine, against the energy sector in Ukraine. Last week we had a G7 plus meeting with Secretary Blinken and Minister Kuleba in order to discuss the situation in the energy sector in Ukraine and their needs. The support for the energy sector in Ukraine remains critical. We will have the first NATO-Ukraine Council in the format of foreign ministers with the participation of Minister Kuleba, and the statement we are going to adopt will send a strong signal of our unwavering support for Ukraine. We will also discuss about the NATO-Ukraine partnership agenda, advancing the reform, and our strong support for Euro-Atlantic aspiration of Ukraine. As there is a strong partnership between EU and NATO, I look forward for a positive decision in December on opening the accession negotiation for Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. On the Western Balkans, I will share with my colleagues the results of my tour in the region. Alongside the Black Sea, the Western Balkan region remains of strategic importance for NATO. NATO has to stay there. Romania is doing its part of the work by having increased its contributions to Euro4 Althea and K4 mission in the region. Thank you.
And a quick question. You said you discussed winter aid for Ukraine. Could you expand a little bit on that? What are the needs and what are you able to provide?
We have discussed in details, according to the information provided by Minister Kuleba, the needs of the energy sector in Ukraine and the shared responsibility of the countries in the region, all of the countries to continue the support for Ukraine.
What does that mean?
It means of providing energy, providing generators, all the needs they have to resist the winter. Thank you. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. It's almost 2 years now since Russia has been waging a very brutal war in Ukraine, and this war has changed dramatically the security situation in Europe and indeed around the world. Now, we as NATO, we have a very important role to play in ensuring peace and stability in Europe, actually peace and stability in the world. And there are three things that we really need to focus on. So the first that we need to focus on is making sure we invest in our own security, that NATO members make and pass the 2% pledge. It's only through investing in ourselves that we can ensure the security of all allies. The second is we have to continue to support Ukraine in all ways. Ukraine as a free and independent nation which is fighting for its very survival against the Russian aggressor. It's in our direct interest to continue supporting Ukraine to make sure that Russia does not win this war, that Ukraine can win the war. We also have to stand by Ukraine, assisting it in moving towards NATO so that when the time is right, the conditions allow, Ukraine could, without hesitation, then become a NATO member state. And the third is on Russia, and the word is containment. We have to work on a 360-degree containment model. It took a while, for everyone to realize the very real and actual threat that Russia is. But now, what to do to deal with it and how to do that in the long term means 360 degrees. It means, of course, conventional forces, it means air defenses, it also means cyber defenses, it means working on defense against disinformation, the whole field. These are the main things that we need to do as NATO looking forward, realizing the very real threat that Russia is. And finally, I'd like to add one final note that we're going to be having an interesting debate on the Balkans, the Western Balkans. It's very important for NATO to ensure peace and stability in the region. Also, my country, Latvia, is heavily invested. We are actively participating in the KFOR mission in Kosovo, with actually our largest contingent we've had outside of Latvia, so we've reaffirmed that commitment. Peace and stability in the Balkans is very important for European peace and stability.
Sorry, a quick question on Ukraine. Does Ukraine need to change its strategy? Because it seems like the Western partners are not able to resupply Ukraine as quickly as it's necessary. And people, even in Ukraine, talk about a stalemate.
Well, first, I think it needs to be acknowledged that Ukraine has done one hell of a job. They have regained about half of the territory that they lost initially to Russia's invasion. Russia, which is 3-4 times larger in terms of manpower, in terms of the economy, Ukraine has withstood that, and the Ukrainian people, their heroism and their determination is something that I think those of us outside of Ukraine can only admire. It's also a question of our expectations. So if there was an expectation that maybe a counteroffensive would be lightning fast and happen overnight, that's clearly not the case. But when we look at the actual numbers, we see the Ukrainians inflicting damage on Russian equipment and personnel on a daily basis.
Minister, are you disappointed that there will be no flag-raising ceremony for Sweden today? And in your view, is Turkey still a reliable NATO partner?
In my view, Turkey is a reliable NATO partner. We're expecting the Turkish parliament to continue and complete the proceedings for the ratification, and we see no reason why this shouldn't happen in a short amount of time.
But are you disappointed that there's no flag-raising ceremony today?
As I said, for Latvia, it's very important that Sweden does become a NATO member state. That's very important for regional security around the Baltic Sea. And we have every indication that our Turkish friends and allies are going through the procedures.
Another question on Ukraine. Now that Ukraine faces the second winter in this war, what are the needs? What is NATO or NATO allies able to provide in order to prevail this winter?
Well, so there are a number of aspects. One is, of course, militarily, everyone is continuing there, but also, especially now, on the energy infrastructure. And for example, we recently had a meeting, it was not within the NATO, it was in the G7 context, and country after country, including my own Latvia, making very concrete pledges and actually moving equipment, high voltage equipment, diesel generators, etc., to help the Ukrainians get through this winter with the expected onslaught and bombardment of its critical infrastructure that Russia is already underway in carrying out.
Are there any lessons?
General Secretary?
The lessons learned is be prepared, and this year Ukraine, together with its allies and friends, is much better prepared.
Minister, your colleague from Lithuania, Gabrielius Landsbergis, has recently voiced some concerns about the security of the Baltic states, and he said that in a few years, we don't know really when, but in a few years Russia might rise again and pose some threats to the Baltic states. So do you also see these concerns in Latvia, from Latvian perspective?
Russia is a threat to the entire security of Europe, not specifically only in the Baltics or elsewhere. And what we in the Baltics, what we in Latvia are doing, we are investing in our own security. So we're going to be at 2.4% of GDP this year, going to 3% by 2027. We see our allies in the EFP, the forward presence in Latvia, beefing up their presence in personnel, in manpower, in capabilities. We are purchasing our own air defenses, coastal defenses, HIMARS systems. So we are investing heavily in our own defense, and the allies are doing this in parallel. And the key word is to be prepared. And defense and deterrence is the key. What we need in Europe is peace. But with Russia, the only way to ensure that peace is to be strong, to make sure that an attack or a movement towards any NATO country would never occur. That is the goal, and that is currently what we are building up.
Everyone stresses that Ukraine already regained 50% of the territory that was occupied by Russia. And you also talked about what are our expectations. Is that a hint, because everyone stresses that, is that a hint to Ukraine that at some point they have to think about their expectations?
No, absolutely not. It's simply an assessment of the actual situation. Ukraine was not able to create, how should we say, lightning counteroffensive because of lack of equipment, lack of weapons, which were not necessarily very quick in coming. And that allowed the Russian side to dig in and prepare their defensive positions, which simply means that the task is possible, but it's much more difficult than maybe some imagined early on.
Do they need other weapons?
The Ukrainians, it's very clear that they need the long-range missiles so that they can seriously impede Russia's logistic capabilities. Because in a war such as this, impeding the logistics capabilities, the resupply ability, is key in success.
Minister.
Thank you. I was present in Vilnius last summer, and I and all other colleagues were very pleased when President Erdogan announced that Turkey will be ratifying Sweden's accession bid. The Parliament came together in October, so now it's the end of November. It's in committee. We're expecting it to get out of committee and get to the big vote. So we're anticipating with pleasure and want to welcome Sweden as the 32nd NATO member state. Sweden will be present today, which is very important. And Sweden is, of course, involved in exercises, but it's important that the final ratification process does go through, and we're expecting this to happen.
If Sweden joins, when Sweden joins, it's quite likely they will end up with the Nordic countries under American command, and that will leave the Baltic countries a bit alone?
I don't think that's a fair assessment. NATO it has a political aspect and it has the military aspect. The military aspect and the defensive plans are drawn up by generals. And then this is what we approved also in Vilnius. So which areas under which command, all in the end is under SACEUR. And it's a question of how the military wants to operate its logistics and its chain of command. So I see no difficulty there whatsoever.
Should the Nordic support you or Kaja Kallas as next General Secretary?
Well, I think it's important to ask what should the next General Secretary have, what are the requirements of the job, and I think that there are a number of them. So one, NATO needs a proven consensus builder. We're going to have 32 countries. Keeping 32 countries together on any topic is a big challenge, and we need a consensus builder that can work with any and all allies to move everyone forward in the same direction. Second, I think it's important that the next Secretary General would come from a country and also personally that has a proven track record of investing in his or her own military spending, so investing the 2% of GDP or above. I think that's important as a clear signal to all allies that this really is important to us. And it also is clear that the next Secretary General has to have a clear vision on the future role of NATO, how it's going to expand, how it's going to be working to contain Russia, acknowledging the threat not in a way that is raising panic, but simply acknowledging the very real threat that Russia is and working with allies to contain Russia. It is doable. We can do it if we are calm but very determined. And that's what the next Secretary General has to have, the ability to carry all this program out.
I have two questions for you. One is on Sweden. How will you speak to Mr. Hakan Fidan about the situation regarding the Parliament not having ratified Sweden?
Well, I think all of us are continually speaking with our Turkish friends and politely inquiring when will that vote take place, and we're being reassured that everything is in process, and we're actually seeing that the movement is there. So I can only say that Latvia is anticipating Sweden's final ratification and accession as the 32nd NATO member state.
How do you interpret what's going on in northern Finland and in other borders where Russia is sending asylum seekers, obviously?
Well, in Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland, for more than 2 years, we have been facing a hybrid threat from Belarus, where the Belarusian authorities are encouraging third country nationals to illegally attempt crossing into the European Union. And we're simply seeing that situation is now extending from Finland, also in Estonia. So you could say the entire Russian-Belarusian border now is a potential hybrid threat. We are all very closely coordinated. We are speaking with each other on a political level on a daily basis, and importantly on the border patrol on a daily basis. It simply is a threat that in Latvia, Lithuania and Poland we've been living with for 2 years, and we have certain expertise. Now, unfortunately, Finland and Estonia are joining, and it looks like a concentrated and coordinated effort backed by Russia. The purpose is to create instability. Actually, from Russia's point of view, it's a low-cost way of potentially causing problems. It doesn't require the army, it doesn't require any large investments. It simply requires allowing people through, or perhaps even organizing people to move through. We've seen that on our border for more than 2 years now, and we're seeing it begin in Finland and Estonia. But the important counter message is that those of us on the NATO side are united and coordinated, and we will be able to maintain NATO's outer border regardless of what Russia does or does not do. How disappointed? Well, I can only say that as the foreign minister of Latvia, and my country is anticipating very much this final ratification procedure in Turkey and in Hungary. And we're hoping that it will be completed as soon as possible. For a
movement of the troops across more easily, without bureaucracy. NATO troops moving from country to country without serious issues.
Yes, well, this has already been addressed. It is being addressed. It is not yet fully solved, but we need to solve it, of course, to have that.
Very crucial for coordination.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you.
Merci, parfait.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Quelques mots sur cette ministérielle. Bien sûr, nous sommes d'abord réunis pour traiter de l'Ukraine. L'Ukraine qui s'apprête à passer un nouvel hiver difficile et chacun a vu le cynisme avec lequel la Russie a marqué une reprise forte des frappes sur Kiev, la plus importante en réalité depuis le début de la guerre, et ceci au moment même des commémorations de Holodomor. C'est une triste illustration de sa mentalité et de son comportement. Donc nous marquerons, nous réaffirmerons notre soutien à l'Ukraine, un soutien qui doit s'exercer dans la durée. Évidemment, vous vous souvenez, étant à l'OTAN, que lors du dernier sommet, nous avons, en G7 et aussi en entraînant quelques autres pays, décidé de prendre des engagements de sécurité pour soutenir l'Ukraine, marquer ce soutien dans la durée. Et donc nous sommes maintenant attelés les uns et les autres à la mise en œuvre de ces engagements. Pour ce qui concerne la France, nous avons engagé des discussions avec l'Ukraine. Elles sont engagées depuis plusieurs semaines maintenant. Elles sont bien avancées et nous espérons d'ailleurs terminer à la fin de l'année ou au tout début de l'année prochaine. Ce que nous proposons, ce sont des engagements de sécurité sur les trois volets, sur l'humanitaire, sur l'économique, et évidemment sur l'aide militaire, à la fois en termes de formation et d'équipement militaire, avec désormais une priorité sur la production et la maintenance. Il faut que nous sachions produire plus et que nous aidions aussi les Ukrainiens à produire davantage. Voilà un premier grand thème. Le deuxième grand thème, je crois que c'est évidemment la préparation du 75e anniversaire de l'Alliance. Donc nous commencerons ici, lors de cette ministérielle, les travaux pour la préparation du prochain sommet. Et dans ce cadre, là aussi, on se souviendra qu'à Vilnius, un chemin a été tracé pour accueillir la perspective d'adhésion de l'Ukraine et l'accompagner. Cette perspective a tout notre soutien, je le redis, et le rôle de l'OTAN à cet égard est important pour l'aider dans ses progrès, en complément avec ce que les alliés font, chacun d'entre eux à titre national, et en complément également de ce que fait l'Union européenne, qui est extrêmement important au profit de l'Ukraine et aux côtés de l'Ukraine. Voilà. Peut-être un troisième et dernier dossier que je souhaiterais évoquer, qui est celui de l'adhésion de la Suède au sommet de Madrid, non pas au sommet de Vilnius, mais au sommet précédent, le sommet de Madrid, c'est-à-dire il y a maintenant 17 mois. Nous avons accueilli favorablement les candidatures de la Finlande et de la Suède. Et je veux rappeler ce que nous avons tous dit d'un commun accord au plus haut niveau des chefs d'État ou des chefs de gouvernement. La force de notre alliance, elle est dans l'unité des alliés. Depuis Madrid, la Finlande est devenue membre de l'Alliance. C'est une bonne chose, nous nous en réjouissons. C'est une fierté de voir flotter son drapeau. La Suède ne l'est pas encore. 29 pays ont ratifié la candidature de la Suède. 2 ne l'ont pas encore fait, donc nous attendons de la Turquie et de la Hongrie qu'elles ratifient désormais sans plus tarder cette adhésion. Il en va de la force et de la crédibilité de notre alliance. Il ne faut pas perdre un jour de plus. Voilà 3 principaux dossiers. Il y en a d'autres, vous le savez, mais les 3 principaux que je voulais évoquer étaient devant vous.
Madame la ministre, est-ce que l'Ukraine doit penser sur une stratégie différente? Parce qu'il y a des gens, même en Ukraine, qui disent « rien ne bouge pas, il y a un stalemate ».
Je ne crois pas que ce soit le cas. On sait que la contre-offensive est difficile. On sait que les Russes avaient pris le temps de faire des lignes de défense, ligne après ligne, qui sont puissamment organisées. Mais vous avez vu aussi que l'Ukraine marque des points avec des frappes en profondeur, qu'elle marque des points aussi en mer Noire, notamment grâce aux équipements que nous lui avons fournis. La flotte russe a été contrainte de s'éloigner très largement de Sébastopol et nous continuons d'être aux côtés de l'Ukraine. Cette stratégie est la bonne, il faut la renforcer, il faut la construire dans la durée et que ce soit un message pour l'Ukraine, pour nos industriels aussi, de façon à ce qu'ils puissent investir et désormais produire plus, aider l'Ukraine davantage. Et c'était un message aussi, vous le savez bien, pour le reste du monde, et en particulier pour la Russie, qu'elle n'est aucun doute que nous sommes engagés aux côtés de l'Ukraine dans la durée. Il en va de l'architecture de sécurité en Europe et de nos intérêts de sécurité. Donc nous le réaffirmons et nous le réaffirmerons ici.
Ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, do you think it has to be continue like that?
Oui, vous connaissez la position de la France sur la trêve. De longue date, depuis plusieurs semaines, le président de la République, le gouvernement, moi-même, nous ne cessons d'appeler à une trêve, une pause qui soit durable. Nous l'avons dit dès le 19 octobre au sommet du Caire, nous l'avons redit au Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies, nous l'avons dit dans nos déplacements dans la région, le président encore fortement. Il faut une trêve de longue durée qui puisse permettre d'acheminer et de distribuer l'aide humanitaire, qui puisse permettre aussi la libération de tous les otages et qui puisse permettre de travailler, d'œuvrer à un cessez-le-feu. Il le faudra parce qu'il faut relancer une perspective politique. La paix et la sécurité dans la région viendront d'une solution politique et de nulle autre. Et je dis ceci en rappelant le droit d'Israël à se défendre, mais le devoir qu'a ce pays, comme tout autre, de se défendre dans le plein respect du droit international humanitaire. Merci à tous. À plus tard. Thank you.
Les 3 otages français libérés hier.
J'ai fait plusieurs tests dès hier soir. Disons que pour nous, c'était un immense soulagement d'avoir pu avoir 3 nouveaux enfants qui sont revenus de la famille, qui recouvrent la liberté. Je partage la joie de leur famille. Ce sont des familles qui sont éprouvées depuis 50 jours, qui ont vécu dans l'inquiétude, dans l'angoisse, qui ont, vous le savez, pour les familles qui ont la joie d'avoir 2 des leurs pour une famille, un autre pour une autre, qui ont subi des épreuves, qui sont dans l'inquiétude. Et maintenant, il faut que nous continuions à travailler comme nous le faisons. Le président de la République, mes collègues des armées, mes collègues de la santé pour apporter de l'aide humanitaire et l'ensemble de nos équipes diplomatiques à Tel Aviv, à Jérusalem, dans la région. Moi-même hier, lorsque j'étais à Barcelone, j'ai rencontré de nombreux de mes homologues arabes. Nous continuons et nous continuerons à travailler pour amener tous les nôtres. La France n'abandonne pas ses enfants, jamais. Elle veut la libération de tous les otages. Il y en a encore. C'est inacceptable de prendre des enfants et des civils en otage. Donc nous continuons. Merci beaucoup.
Surtout que if there is a delegation, we can be stuck here.
Siinä on molemmat kansainvälinen media ja Suomi. Jo englanniksi.
This meeting, the ministerial meeting, will concentrate on mainly the preparations for the Washington summit. And obviously, we regret that Sweden still is not a member of NATO. The membership of Sweden is highly crucial for the entire alliance, and we hope that in the near future there will be further steps to be taken in that direction. Now, Ukraine is, as we speak, fighting an existential war for the future of Europe, for our way of life and our values. So the solid support for Ukraine is extremely important now and also towards the Washington summit, that there's also a credible path for Ukraine into the membership of NATO someday. Now, we think that burden sharing, and also especially that Europe takes a stronger role in supporting NATO in defense spending, but also in ramping up its defense industry, is highly topical and of key interest, not only for Finland, but obviously for our common future. So thank you so much.
Frau Ministerin, was werden Sie Ihren türkischen Kollegen heute sagen? Und sind Sie enttäuscht, dass es noch nicht so weit ist mit Schweden?
Also ich muss sagen, wir sind tatsächlich ziemlich enttäuscht. Wir hatten uns schon gefreut, dass wir dieses Treffen dafür benutzen, dass wir erstens Schweden willkommen heißen in die NATO und dass wir uns auf andere Themen konzentrieren können. Aber klar, ich werde dieses Thema auch mit meinem Kollegen aus der Türkei wieder aufnehmen und wir hoffen, dass wir vielleicht in den kommenden Tagen, Wochen und tatsächlich vor Weihnachten diesen Schritt gehen können, dass Schweden ein Mitglied wird.
Yksi kysymys vähän tämän kokouksen ulkopuolelta päivän toista uutisesta. Missä kohtaa EUn pakotevalmistelu on menossa pakkolunastusten osalta Venäjältä jäädytetyistä asioista? Ja onko mahdollista, että tällä voitaisiin saada Helsinki-halli viimein takaisin suomalaiseen käyttöön?
No itse asiassa uusin pakotepaketti on valmistumassa ja Suomi on ollut siinä tiiviisti valmisteluissa mukana. Ja on tosiaan aivan totta, että on tärkeää, että Helsinki-halli saadaan yleisen edun mukaisesti suomalaisten käyttöön ja tässä toivotaan nyt pikasta etenemistä ja sen eteen tehdään töitä.
Venäjä työntää Suomeen edelleen pakolaisia tällä kertaa pohjoisen kautta ja Suomi harkitsee rajan sulkemista. Kuinka pitkään tämä on Suomen oma kysymys? Frontex on vähän apuna. Tarvitaanko tässä avuksi vielä NATOa?
No Frontex on tosiaan aika merkittävästikin apuna. Frontex lähettää 50 henkilöä auttamaan Suomen rajan osalta ja on totta, että tämä on tosiaan paitsi Suomen raja, niin Euroopan unionin ulkoraja ja myös NATOn ulkoraja. Ja sekä Euroopan unionissa että NATOssa yhtä lailla kuin meillä Suomessa tiedostetaan, että kyseessä on täysin häikäilemätön hybridioperaatio. Ja sen vuoksi meidän vasteemme, ei pelkästään Suomena, vaan unionin ja toisaalta myös NATOn puolelta tulee olemaan tarvittava kaiken aikaa.
Onko raja suljettava vai onko muita keinoja?
Me koko ajan arvioidaan tilannetta ja sen mukaan edetään, mutta täytyy sanoa, että ei varmaankaan Venäjänkään kannalta ole toivottavaa, että varsinkaan pitkäksi aikaa raja menee kokonaan kiinni. Että päinvastoin heidän tulee ymmärtää, että paluu entiseen operatiiviseen yhteistyöhön on hyvä ja tarvittava. He eivät voi käyttää kolmansien maiden kansalaisia tällä tavalla hyväkäkseen jossain operaatiossa, jonka tarkoitusperiä mekään emme todella ymmärrä. Ja toki toivomme, että Venäjä vetäytyy Ukrainasta.
Mikä on se viesti, jonka aiot tästä rajan tilanteesta kollegoille nyt viedä, ja missä kulkee se raja, että tässä jonkinlaista Natonkin apua ehkä sitten tarvittaisiin?
Tätä keskustelua laajasti myös virkatasolla, ja itse aion nostaa tätä tänään esille kokouksessa ja kollegojen kanssa, ja pohdimme askelia ja toki tilanteita, jossa mahdollisesti joudumme tukeutumaan Naton apuun.
Ministeri, kuinka sietämätöntä tämä Ruotsin NATO-jäsenyyden venyminen on? Rupeako se jo syömään Naton uskottavuutta?
No, meillä oli eilen Ruotsin pääministeri, ulkoministeri ja puolustusministeri Helsingissä, ja keskustelimme toki tästäkin aiheesta. Mutta täytyy toivoa tosiaan, että nyt vielä jouluun mennessä asia nyt kähtäisi niin eteenpäin, että Ruotsi tosiaan saataisiin jäseneksi mahdollisimman pian ja ihan muutaman viikon kuluessa. On harmillista, että se ei tapahtunut nyt. Olemme pettyneitä siihen, se on täysin selvä. Mutta nyt katsotaan eteenpäin ja toivotaan, että nyt nämä viimeiset askeleet saataisiin käytyä mahdollisimman pian.
Aiotteko käydä tässä kokouksessa jotain keskusteluita tähän liittyen?
Ehdottomasti aion käydä.
Frau Ministerin, noch mal kurz eine Frage zu Schweden. Sie haben gerade gesagt, Sie sind sehr enttäuscht. Inwiefern würde der Beitritt Schweden auch die finnische Sicherheit verbessern? Würden Sie sich sicherer fühlen? Könnten Sie das noch mal so ein bisschen erklären?
Also tatsächlich ist es so, dass Schweden für uns nicht nur also auf sozialer, politischer Menschenebene sehr nah ist. Das sind unsere Brüder und Schwestern. Aber tatsächlich für die gesamte Sicherheit und die Verteidigung im Ostseeraum ist es einfach nur unentbehrlich, dass Schweden Mitglied NATOs wird. Und wie bereits erwähnt, ist es nicht nur für die Sicherheit in unserer Region wichtig, sondern für das gesamte Bündnis, weil Schweden selbstverständlich auch sehr wichtige Kapazitäten mitbringt, die uns allen zunutze kommen.
Setzt die Türkei hier die Glaubwürdigkeit hart aufs Spiel?
Das denke ich nicht. Die NATO ist glaubwürdig und die NATO ist stärker und vereinter denn je. Und wir hoffen, dass wir diesen Schritt so schnell wie möglich gehen können.
Ukraina valmistautuu toiseen sotatalveen ja rintama on jämähtänyt paikalleen. Onko muita vaihtoehtoja kuin käydä sotaa loppuun asti? Miten sota saadaan päättymään?
Kaikista tärkeintä on ymmärtää se, että tämä on Ukrainan puolustustaistelu, jossa he toki puolustavat myös meidän läntisiä arvojamme ja meidän eurooppalaista elämäntapaamme, mutta tästä samaisesta syystä se on ukrainalaisten asia päättää, että milloin on mahdollinen tilanne lähteä pohtimaan neuvotteluja, mutta ilman muuta neuvotteluita ja tietä kohti rauhaa valmistellaan ja me olemme kumppaneina ja ystävinä siinä tietenkin tukena ja teemme kaiken mahdollisen sen eteen. Esimerkiksi nyt tästä rauhanformulasta ei ole pelkästään viime aikoina keskusteltu, vaan on päästy hyvinkin eteenpäin sen 10 kohdan asialistan osalta ja Suomikin ottaa vastuuta erityisesti ympäristöturvallisuuden osalta yhtenä puheenjohtajana, jotta saamme kaiken sitten selviämään siihen päivään mennessä, kun neuvottelut alkavat ja sitä kautta tuettua Ukrainaa entistä vahvemmin.
Milloin on aika Ukrainan liittyä NATOon?
Meidän mielestä Ukrainan rooli ja asema on ehdottomasti NATOssa tulevaisuudessa. On selvää, että NATOon ei voi liittyä sotaa käyvä maa, mutta kaikki ne askeleet, jotka siihen voidaan tehdä ja valmistautua, että jonain päivänä tuo sotakin on ohi ja Ukraina on silloin valmis jäseneksi, niin ne askeleet ovat itse asiassa jo alkaneet viime kesänä Vilnassa ja Suomi yhtenä NATOn jäsenmaana erittäin pontevasti tukee Ukrainaa tässä.
How damaging to NATO is the delay in Sweden's membership?
Well, let's put it this way: it's not damaging to NATO. NATO is hugely unified and credible and more or less back to its roots now after the full-scale invasion that Russia started against Ukraine. And I'm fully convinced it will stay this way. But it has to be said that, yes, we are so disappointed that Sweden to this day is not a member yet. But once Sweden becomes a member, and we hope that will happen very, very soon, Sweden will bring its capabilities to the use of the entire alliance. But of course, it will mean masses also, especially for the region, which is important for Finland as well, which is the area around the Baltic Sea. Thank you. Kiitos. Danke.
Well, after I will switch in Bulgarian. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, important meeting ahead of us with an agenda where I see two key words, coordination and anticipation. So I think that today it's more than ever important to continue to support Ukraine as long as it takes, but at the same time really to be proactive and to define together what are the next steps in order not to fulfill. Of course, very important question on the agenda is the Western Balkans. I must say that the security in Western Balkans is part of our security, so we need definitely here to discuss together how to tackle some of the disinformation campaigns, but at the same time to see together with our partners how we can contribute to have a normalization process in order definitely again to see the stability and positive perspective ahead of the region. Of course, we'll all prepare the next summit in Washington as concrete as we should be. That will be maybe the best that we can do today, and I very much hope that today's discussion will be constructive and will give a clear perspective not only for Ukraine, not only for the other members that we all expect, like Sweden, but really together to say that NATO and European Union, we are the guarantee of the security for all our citizens. Thank you.
What do you mean by when you say worried about creating expectations? Well, what did you mean by when you said you're worried about creating expectations?
Well, you know that during the Vilnius summit there was the expectation for the membership, and I think that for us it was important to create this council, Ukraine, in order to show that we are equal partners and we have to discuss. And that's why this meeting is important today, because that will be the first one in order to define how together we can accelerate the process, but at the same time really to be here and to follow not only the question of the membership, but the reforms in Ukraine, the preparedness, how together we can modernize our armies in order to be ready for the challenges of tomorrow.
When do you think Ukraine will be ready to join NATO? When would you like to see that happen?
Well, I think that there is only one condition that we would like to wish and to have in order to have them as member of the Union. That means the end of the war. Thank you.
Bulgaria opens the airspace for the plane of Mr. Lavrov.
Well, actually, the decision is to open the airspace for the Russian delegation that need to join Skopje, because you know how important is this meeting in Skopje in order to preserve OSCE, and we allowed this flight, but for us it was important before to check the list with the people, and as you already can see in our decision, there is no people that are in the sanction list and that are included in the delegation. So, thank you.
Госпожо министър, може ли и на български? Чакайте само. Да, не на сянка. Елате малко по-насам. Това е заради светлината. Да, така. Ако може така, да. Добре. Обаче, какви теми ще обсъждате днес?
Три важни теми в днешното заседание. Разбира се, най-напред подготовката за следващата среща на върха в Вашингтон през 2024 година. Аз искам да кажа, че следващата година се навършват 75 години от създаването на НАТО и 20 години откакто България е член. Така че за мен ще бъде много важно в центъра да поставим две ключови думи – координация и изпреварващи действия. Да направим така, че да не създаваме очаквания, които не можем да изпълним, а напротив всички заедно да имаме ясна представа за колко широко обхватни са предизвикателствата в областта на сигурността. Радвам се, че ще имаме възможност да говорим за Западните Балкани. Не само заинтересована от това да има стабилност в Западните Балкани, но и допринася със своя опит тази стабилност да бъде дълготрайна. Затова смятам, че е много силно послание, че заедно с върховния представител и външните министри на НАТО ще можем да погледнем теми като борбата с дезинформацията, нормализиране на процеса Белград-Прищина, но разбира се всички да си дадем ясна равносметка, че стабилността на Западните Балкани означава стабилност за Европа. Радвам се, че ще имаме възможност още веднъж всички, вярвам, много ясно да изразим подкрепата си за Украйна. Самия факт, че след срещата в Вилнюс за първи път съвета НАТО-Украйна се събира, означава, че този формат има много ключова роля и той наистина е да очертае следващите стъпки, защото когато ще си говорим за членството на Украйна в НАТО, България подкрепя, за нас е също толкова важно заедно като партньори да проследим страната в реформите, които тя прави, за това да бъде чисто и просто добре подготвена и за бъдещи кризи и да отговори на изискванията, които са изисквания на НАТО. Така че да, за мен е много важно, че всички тези теми ще бъдат обсъдени. Може би още една бих добавила, защото за нас тя също е важна. Несъмнено технологичната подготвеност. Колкото по-често си говорим за иновационния фонд в НАТО, за фонда Диане, толкова по-бързо ще разберем, че технологичната подготвеност означава по-добри отбранителни способности и със сигурност Европа, съюзниците в НАТО, в Европейски съюз, не могат да си позволят този лукс да изостават и това са важни теми.
Госпожо министър, много ви моля да уточним как върви диалогът София-Скопие относно преминаването на Сергей Лавров през българското въздушно пространство. Само за него ли разрешава България преминаване или за цялата делегация? И София знае ли кой е в тази делегация? Скопие казал ли не кой е в тази делегация?
София никога не би си позволила да даде разрешение за прелитане пред въздушното пространство, ако нямаме ясна представа за състава на делегацията. Затова, освен че разрешението е временно, точно за целта на срещата, защото срещата в Скопие е изключително важна. Смятам, ако искаме в един момент изобщо да си говорим за бъдеще на организацията за сътрудничество, също толкова беше важно да имаме пълен списък с делегацията и ясно сме казали, че когато в списък има човек, който е включен в санкционните списъци на Европейския съюз, той няма право да пътува и това сме и направили.
В последния момент, че имаме
извинявайте,
да променим
с Европейската комисия. Всичко необходимо като координация е направено, защото сами разбираме, че това е важно. Факта, че господин Лавров може да пътува, е свързан с изключенията, които и на него са дадени, бивайки в списъка за международни форуми да може да участва. Затова и продължителността на това изключение е много ясно дефинирана. От 3 часа за заседанието до 72 часа, като ние, как пак казвам, ясно сме получили, поискали информация и получили за списъка и в списъка, който сме получили, сме изключили всеки, който е в санкционния списък на Европейския съюз.
Имало ли такива хора в делегацията първоначално?
Колко имаше, да, ние не сме се съгласили. Свършили сме си работата, смятам.
Има изключени от делегацията?
Да, има изключени.
Колко бяха? Колко души?
Много. Да. Делегацията е многобройна, но вижте, това е формат, който всяка една от държавите решава. Аз също съм с много голяма делегация в Скопие и смятам, че сериозността на заседанието показва, че и екипите отзад са мобилизирани.
Вие ще се срещнете ли с господин Лавров в Скопие и ако да, какво ще му кажете?
Как може да ми задавате този въпрос? Мисля, че отговорът ми е много ясен, защото България е членка на Европейския съюз и има много ясно прието поведение и начин, по който се отнасяме в такива срещи. И аз смятам да застана твърдо зад него, както го правя от ден първи, откакто съм външен министър. Благодаря.
For Canada. So first and foremost, let me talk to you about Israel-Hamas Middle East conflict. First and foremost, Canada welcomes the extension of the truce. We were all relieved seeing hostages being released and of course humanitarian aid going into Gaza. We hope that there can be another extension of the truce because we need to see all hostages being released. We need to make sure that there is more humanitarian aid going into Gaza, and we need to see all foreign nationals being released because Canada still has Canadians that are remaining in Gaza and would love to be able to get out of Gaza. I would like to thank, of course, Qatar, Egypt, and the US who have been playing an important role. And we hope that the extension of the truce will help to bring a lasting peace to the Middle East, which can be only achieved through a two-state solution. Now, let me talk to you also about Ukraine. Of course, while what is happening in the Middle East is taking a lot of our attention, we need to make sure that we're always focused on Ukraine, and that is why we will continue to support Ukraine. I think we did a lot back in Vilnius this past summer. We had important commitments that were announced, and now we're in the midst of implementing these commitments. And this will be part of the conversations we will be having today and tomorrow at NATO. Of course, Canada has been spearheading the idea of long-term security commitments for Ukraine, and right now we are working amongst the G7 to make sure that these long-term security commitments are also fulfilled, and so you can hear me talking about that in the coming days.
Je peux tout dire ça en français si vous voulez.
Minister, one
Il y a personne qui veut que je parle en français ici.
Minister, one question.
I can say that in French. I'll just say it very quickly in French. Okay? Donc, sur la question du Moyen-Orient, je voulais tout simplement vous dire que le Canada voit d'un bon œil le fait qu'il y ait un prolongement, une extension de la trêve. Nous nous attendons et nous soutenons une autre extension de la trêve. Pourquoi? Parce que nous pensons que c'est la seule façon qu'il puisse y avoir une libération de tous les otages, qu'il puisse y avoir aussi plus d'aide qui soit acheminée à Gaza et finalement que les Canadiens qui sont pris à Gaza et tous les autres nationaux qui sont à Gaza puissent être en mesure de quitter la région. Et essentiellement, ce que l'on en appelle, c'est que cette extension de la trêve puisse mener à une paix durable qui pourra se faire uniquement par une solution à 2 États. Aussi, ici, nous sommes présents pour parler de l'importance de soutenir l'Ukraine, aussi être en mesure de remplir notre promesse d'aider les Ukrainiens à long terme. Le Canada a été très impliqué dans le développement de l'idée des garanties de sécurité à long terme pour l'Ukraine et c'est ce sur quoi je vais travailler avec mes homologues au cours des 2 prochains jours. Thank you.
Do you think Ukraine has enough to win this war?
I think that Ukraine has a lot, but needs more, and that is why we came up with important commitments this past summer. Now, while there's been lots of words, we need even more action, and that is why we'll be talking about the implementation of our commitments, which is key.
In the Middle East, over the past several weeks, there were so many activity, Iranian militia activity. They have been attacked some bases, U.S. bases. Are you concerned in the Middle East on Iranian militia activity?
We're always concerned with Iran. We're always concerned with the fact that Iran is a threat to the Middle East, and that is why our approach when it comes to Iran has been clear. Iran has no place and needs to stay out of any form of Israel attacks, and of course Hezbollah and Hamas for us are terrorist organizations supported by Iran.
So you're talking about action, but what, you're still below the 2%. Canada's still not fulfilling the 2%. You talk about action, why is that?
Well, Canada is now increasing its military defense spending. Particularly, we're heading the Latvian NATO forces. We're working right now on the defense policy update, and we will increase our defense spending.
So you said that it's time for action. So
Yeah.
Enough the words anymore, but still the resupply is not fast enough. The EU misses its target to send 1 million ammunition. The drawdown package from the US was very small last time, and the aid is blocked in Congress. Does Ukraine need to think about another strategy, like truly think about another strategy in order to win this war?
I think we have a good strategy, and Ukraine has a good strategy, but we need to implement it. And so that's why we'll be talking about it. Prime Minister Trudeau and President von der Leyen and Charles Michel were together in Canada last week and announced more support to Ukraine, and we will continue to make sure that that happens. Thank you. Thank you so much.